In this set of videos, I would like to introduce to you a framework called TensorFlow. TensorFlow is a framework developed by Google to support machine learning work. And if you were to visit this site here, www.tensorflow.org, you get more information more than what I am talking about. So here is a tensorflow.org. It's a website managed and maintained by Google. And I'm going to be introducing a lot of concepts from this page, and I'm going to be referring to quite a few links on this site as well. Now, TensorFlow is one of the frameworks compared to many other frameworks that are out there that you can choose from. For example, MXNet, or PyTorch, CNTK, are some of the networks or the frameworks that I'm familiar with. Theano is once upon a time I used to use it, but I don't use it anymore. But TensorFlow is one of the other popular frameworks that has become very useful in many aspects of my development work. So I will introduce TensorFlow, and of course, depending on what you choose, you may want to look at other frameworks as well. Now, let's think of TensorFlow, what that really means. So if I were to take a guess, I wanted to know what a tensor for a long time. So I looked up on Wikipedia, and for quite some time, I didn't really understand the definition or what it really meant for a long time. So for example, on Wikipedia, the tensor is defined as an algebraic object that describes a multilinear relationship between sets of algebraic objects related to a vector space. And that definition does not tell me anything about what a tensor was. So eventually I realized by looking at and hearing from all the other experts in the industry that tensor is a nth dimensional matrix. So if you use that as a definition of a tensor, perhaps that will serve the purpose for all you need to do for deep neural networks. So with that definition, let's think of tensor as a nth dimensional matrix. Okay. Now, when you think of deep neural networks, there are lots of matrices that you work with, right? So there is a weight matrix, there is an input matrix, and you multiply those two, and you create new matrices or new tensors. So there is a flow of these tensors through the deep neural networks, and that may be the motivations for creating this name, TensorFlow. That's just my guess. Well, having said that, here are some of the utilities that you get with TensorFlow. There are elementary operations. TensorFlow keeps the objects in its own way, and there are elementary operations that moves from TensorFlow objects into NumPy in Python. So you can get to use the benefits of both the Python and TensorFlow as well. Keras, once upon a time, was a higher level construct to support many different deep neural network frameworks such as CNTK, Theano, and TensorFlow, etc. But recently, TensorFlow has integrated Keras so tightly so you can seamlessly use all the higher level constructs and use TensorFlow at the same time. TensorFlow comes with a JavaScript library that you can use it in the browser for evaluating rather than creating background objects. You can directly evaluate the models online using JavaScripts. TensorFlow Hub, where you can download the pre-built models, or you can also publish your own models onto TensorFlow Hub. TensorFlow comes with TensorBoard, that when you are building deep neural networks, you'll be using different kinds of hyperparameters for trying out which model may work, and you may want to go back and see which model worked better. Did it actually work better in the training or the testing? So TensorBoard will help you to monitor your training and choose the right set of parameters, or even just observing what's really going on. TensorFlow Lite is a set of utilities that you can use it for mobile applications such as Android, iOS, or Raspberry Pi. Okay, first things first, but if you want to use TensorFlow in Python, um, you may want to set up few things. Here is one recommendations I would give, but you can choose any options of your choice. This is not the only way that you can do. You can use container kind of frameworks, or you can use even use Colab, a online utility from Google that you can use freely deployable notebooks that you can share as well. So I develop all this on my local computer on my MacBook, where I create a virtual environment, and I create a virtual environment in my home directory called tilde venv. Um, so I'm using Python 3.9. So that's why I'm calling this virtual environment as Py39. You may choose any version 3.7 and up, and that should serve the purpose for these set of videos. Now, when I create that, I also create an alias so that I can easily type in the alias to activate or deactivate that virtual environment. So once if you activate that virtual environment, you may want to go ahead and install TensorFlow using pip install TensorFlow. And of course, there are other ways that you can also install TensorFlow from the source code, but this is just the way how I chose to install TensorFlow in my environment. Now, for all the purposes, I use VS Code for developing my applications, because VS Code offers me a centralized place to organize my source code, and then also I can build everything without having to leave the environment. Because if you want to use the terminal, the terminal is right here, and there is a debugging capability and all that. But if you are using VS Code and using a virtual environment, you may want to tell VS Code what environment that you want to use and test and build your applications. So as you can see here, I have different versions of Python installed in different places. And if you want to tell VS Code which virtual environment it has to use to build your applications, you have to give it a location. So go to VS Code settings, search for venv path, and tell where you store all your virtual environment, and it will automatically pick up the environment and gives you an option so that you can choose the environment which you can work from the command line also within the VS Code environment as well. Well, that is the setup, and in the next set of videos we're going to talk about how to use TensorFlow and the Keras framework to build simple to deep neural networks.